What's going on, everyone? Today we are talking about four extremely undervalued running backs. Guys like Alvin Kamara, guys like James Conner, guys like Javonte Williams. But before we get into it, if you guys could, go down, drop a like on this video. I'm answering every single comment. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know and subscribe to the channel. It is the #1 way to support me. It's completely free. With that though, guys, let's hop right into it with our first player. And this is the biggest news of the day. It is Alvin Kamara.
Back to the ground game, Kamara, shot out of the cannon, and he's in. Touchdown.
And so just a couple hours ago, it breaks that Alvin Kamara will not be receiving felony charges for a battery case that came out a year back. Now, we've been speculating on this for months now as to whether or not Alvin Kamara was going to receive criminal punishment for his actions. It seems that he is not. He does have to pay over $100,000 to the victim and do some community service, but it looks like he's not going to be in any real legal trouble at this current point. Now, we don't know if the NFL is still going to go ahead and suspend him for this, but at this point, it does seem likelier and likelier by the day that Alvin Kamara might not be suspended at this current point. And if that's the case, Alvin Kamara is one of the most dominant backs in all of football and one of the best fantasy football running backs we've seen over the last 5 seasons. I mean, this is somebody who had one of the best single seasons at the running back position ever, finishing 37th all time among running backs, right behind 1997 Barry Sanders, and finishing with over 340 PPR fantasy points. I mean, this is somebody who can catch the football out of the backfield like nobody's business, can have over 100 targets on any given season. And now I feel like the situation is even better for Alvin Kamara. We do see Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller come in. Both of these guys will be sapping some rushing volume, but Alvin Kamara's production historically has been predicated on efficiency. I mean, this is somebody who would go out there and only have 200-ish carries, but then have another 80 receptions to carry him to the running back 2, the running back 3, the running back 5. I mean, every single season this guy's been dominant. Last season we did see a little bit of regression from Alvin Kamara, finishing at his worst rank of his career as the running back 16 in PPR scoring, but even still, if you are getting that as somewhat of a floor type of benchmark for Alvin Kamara, that is absolutely fine. Now, I know there are questions with Alvin Kamara. I mean, he's been in the league 6 years, he's 27 years old, but at an ADP of 102 right now, I am absolutely fine swinging for the fences on a guy who could finish as running back 1 if touchdowns fall his way. And with this offense having upgrades in both the wide receiver position, I mean, we got Chris Olave coming into year 2, potentially Michael Thomas coming back, although I wouldn't put my money on it. But not only that, we have Derek Carr as well, somebody who is a significant upgrade over Andy Dalton. Well, Derek Carr is not a top 5, not even a top 10 quarterback in the league. I would put him around league average, whereas Andy Dalton was a bottom 5, bottom 10 quarterback in the NFL. So now we have an upgraded quarterback in Derek Carr, we have an upgraded wide receiver room, and we have more running backs to take the weight off of Alvin Kamara. I think this could be a really, really great season for Alvin Kamara if things go his way. I mean, we've seen just how explosive he is in the run game. We've seen how great he is in the receiving game. I think Alvin Kamara is a supremely undervalued player right now where he's going, especially because the NFL has not let out any jurisdiction onto whether Alvin Kamara is going to be suspended. And if that's the case, it seems less and less likely by the day they are going to suspend him for a long period of time. Maybe they do end up suspending him for 4 games. Maybe they even end up suspending him for 6 games. But he is too much of a difference maker at the running back position for you to be passing up on at an ADP of 100 right now. That's why I'm drafting Alvin Kamara just about everywhere. Either way, let's move on to my next player, and that is James Conner.
That's a name that goes way, way back in Bears history. What a catch by Conner! And James Conner is in! What a play!
Now, for anyone that's been following the show for any amount of time, you guys know just how much I love James Conner. I own him in 36% of all leagues. He is my most drafted running back. I am so exposed to James Conner. And my reasons behind it are plenty. I mean, first of all, this guy has a nose for the end zone. This is somebody who had 18 touchdowns and 8 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, despite being injured in both seasons. This is somebody who's on an offense. Well, there are a lot of question marks. At the same time, this is somebody who has performed both with Kyler Murray and without Kyler Murray. With Kyler Murray, he's been fabulous, averaging a little under a touchdown a game. I mean, this is somebody who can get in the red zone 2 times, 3 times a game and just win your week because of that. But even without Kyler Murray, he's been very good as well. This is somebody who has been heavily utilized in the passing game without Kyler Murray. And now that we have DeAndre Hopkins out of this offense, I think there will be even more room for James Conner to take a large workload in the receiving game. Not only that, this depth chart is absolutely desolate, one of the worst in all of football. I mean, we're talking about Keontae Ingram, Corey Clement, and Tyson Williams behind him. I mean, there's nobody vying for serious volume behind James Conner. And well, yes, this team will be pretty bad. They did pick up Paris Johnson in the first round of this year's NFL draft, which does bolster their offensive line quite a bit. Not only that, this is somebody that when healthy has been a dominant fantasy football presence. I mean, first of all, from weeks 10 to 17, he was the running back 5 in all of fantasy football last season, meaning he was a potential league winner at the position if you held onto him or traded for him midway throughout the season. He was more productive than guys like Saquon Barkley and Najee Harris. And then 2 years ago, he was the running back 5 outright, which is crazy production from James Conner. Well, yes, the floor is low with this offense. We don't know exactly when Kyler Murray is going to be back. There is reason to believe that James Conner will be heavily utilized in this offense, and with this defense being pretty bad, I think that James Conner will have to step up and take a pretty substantial role as potentially the number 1 player in this offense, with him and Marquise Hollywood-Brown being the only 2 players of real relevance here for fantasy football. So I think that James Conner is going to be a phenomenal player this year. Somebody who, yes, the offense is disgusting. Maybe you don't want to watch a lot of Cardinals games, but will produce a lot for your fantasy team. Either way, let's move on to my next player, and that is Joe Mixon.
Mixon right there, sample the block. They also got a Hopkins block, and there goes Mixon, darting it.
And so Joe Mixon is in a very similar situation to James Conner in terms of the depth chart. But this offense is absolutely outstanding. I mean, we're talking about a depth chart right now that consists of Chase Brown, Travion Williams, and Chris Evans. None of these guys, again, are going to be stealing serious volume. I mean, Chase Brown was a 6th-round pick. None of these guys are higher than 4th-round draft capital, so Joe Mixon is going to be getting a pretty heavy workload in this offense. Even if they are not going to be running the ball that much as they did last season, ranking 27th in total run rate, Joe Mixon was still pretty heavily utilized in not only the running game, but the passing game as well. I mean, this is somebody who had 75 targets for 60 receptions, and while he was not that efficient with his receptions, when you have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins spreading the field for you, it's only a matter of time before Joe Mixon is able to break out some long receiving yard touchdowns and some long receiving yard gains. Not only that, you'll also have this O-line improving substantially, as right now, according to Pro Football Network, they rank as the 13th best offensive line in the NFL. Well, it is not a perfect offensive line by any stretch of the imagination. It is good enough to get the job done for Joe Mixon. They let Samaje Perine walk this offseason and pretty much brought in nobody in his place. And Samaje Perine was the real thorn at Joe Mixon's side, stealing volume, stealing receiving work. Now Joe Mixon is all alone in this offense, and yet right now he has an ADP around 52. And I just don't understand that. Yes, Joe Mixon burned a lot of people pretty badly last year. I mean, he only had one really relevant fantasy performance, but at the same time, this is an elite offense. This is somebody who has gotten it done in years past, finishing as the running back 3 a mere 2 seasons ago, and finishing consistently around the top 10 at the running back position year in and year out. I think Joe Mixon is a good buy where he's going right now. And when you have the career, the team, the offensive line that Joe Mixon has, there really is no way for him to fail, barring injury. Yes, again, it was a very disappointing performance from him last season, but we should see him rebound again this season, and we should see him get more work in the red zone this season. I mean, he had 16 total red zone carries last season and only translated that into 5 touchdowns. Yes, you can attribute a lot of that to Joe Mixon, and yes, some of it was Joe Mixon. But at the same time, a lot of that is sheerly luck-based. I mean, a lot of that is offensive line-based, and again, the offensive line has improved from last season to this season, so we should see Joe Mixon get in the end zone just a little bit more than he did last season. Either way, let's move on to my last player, and that is Javonte Williams.
Today, as Javonte Williams takes the handoff, and Williams, nice second effort, still going. Javonte Williams carrying defenders.
And this is by far the riskiest of buy lows that I have on this video. That's why I was saving him for last. I mean, I totally get if you want to avoid Javonte Williams. He had a pretty messy ACL tear, tearing multiple ligaments in his knee. And yes, that is concerning. Not only that, we really don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of the season. I mean, right now, he says he's going to be ready as of 2 days ago, saying he feels like he's ready, he's good to go during training camp. But at this point, we realistically just don't know with Javonte Williams. He might not be able to start till week 4, week 5, week 6. But at the same time, this is somebody who has proven that he can be a great running back at the NFL level if given the workload. I mean, we saw how great he was with Melvin Gordon splitting carries a mere 2 years ago, where he finished as the running back 17 in all of fantasy football. Again, despite splitting a workload evenly with Melvin Gordon and this offense being absolutely horrific. Now we have Sean Payton coming in, and Russell Wilson, hopefully, fingers crossed, will be better. I mean, he pretty much cannot be worse than what he did last season. If he is, I'm sorry to all Broncos fans, that stinks. But either way, Russell Wilson should be better this next season, at least not worse than he was last season. And we have Javonte Williams in this backfield with just Samaje Perine backing him up. I mean, Samaje Perine is somebody who's never been more than a change of pace back at the NFL level and come in and been a pretty good running back in Joe Mixon's stead. But at the same time, he's never been consistently leaned on to be a great running back for a team week in and week out. And so I think Javonte Williams, once he returns and feels good to go, he will be a good running back in this offense yet again. Now, obviously, there are massive concerns with his ACL. I mean, we saw how J.K. Dobbins was last season. It took him a full season pretty much to get back to feeling like 80% of himself. Not only that, we saw Saquon Barkley 2 years ago do the same thing and not look great off a torn ACL. There is supreme amount of risk with Javonte Williams. But when you are drafting for the best possible fantasy football lineup over on Underdog Fantasy, you want the guys who can go out and be league winners. You don't want to draft a running back at the running back 30 who cannot outperform the running back 24, who cannot outperform the running back 20. Javonte Williams gives you an insane ceiling at the running back position that few other running backs in this range can offer you. I mean, yes, you have guys like Alvin Kamara, guys like James Conner in this range, who I would probably prefer to draft, but at the same time, Javonte Williams' ceiling is absolutely insane. I mean, this is somebody who's being drafted at the end of round 2, beginning of round 3 on underdog drafts last season, so we know he has the potential ceiling. The Broncos, they go out, they spend a very high draft capital pick on Javonte, picking him 35th overall in the draft and trading up to get him. I mean, this is the range where tons of elite running backs have came out. We're talking guys like Nick Chubb. We're talking guys like Jonathan Taylor. And hopefully, Javonte Williams is next. We should see this offense take a step up, especially with the improvements in the O-line that they have made during this offseason. Right now, Pro Football Network ranking them as the 10th best offensive line in all of football, which, well, it is not, again, spectacular. It is not the Eagles' offensive line. It is more than a functioning unit. And if Javonte Williams is able to come back and feels good for a training camp, he's one of the most undervalued players in all of fantasy football right now. Again, a huge risk, but a risk I am willing to take to get the best possible lineup to potentially beat people in the championship weeks when it really matters. Either way, that's going to be it from me. Hope you guys did enjoy the video. One last thing before I go. I'm sorry I did take a 1-month break. I am so sorry for taking that long of a break. I did not think it was going to be that long. Sorry to everyone who has watched me over the past month. I will be back making more daily fantasy football content. Thank you all so much for standing by and supporting me. Either way, be sure to like, be sure to comment. I'm answering every single comment, and subscribe to the channel. Turn that notification bell on so you don't miss another video. With that though, guys, as always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.